Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. I'm your host, Greg Flammang, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uyeyama, Mr. Jamie University. It is Thursday, March 6th, and we're going to be talking some Notre Dame season projections. We're going to be talking a little bit about building the roster and building elite talent on the roster, and how that's really, we're just talking about two positions there because Notre Dame is pretty elite in a lot of other positions on their football team, which is nice going forward. But we're going to talk about that. Chad Bowden continues to talk to the media about things, Jamie, and we're gonna get into that. We both have some thoughts on that. And as it turns out, Mike Martin, Notre Dame's new GM, is meeting with the media literally right now. So we'll talk about those comments as well. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. If you like what you hear, please hit that like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell. So whenever it is, we are going live. Links to the podcast are in the description below. And as always, the show is brought to you by ESQ Clothing, founded by Notre Dame alum Ge Wang. You've seen ESQ on all your favorite Notre Dame players and coaches. Over a decade of making the best custom clothing available, ESQ will help you look and feel your best in 2025. From a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt or bomber jacket, or the perfect tuxedo for wedding season, check out Ge's amazing work at esqclothing.com. Book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention ISD, get 10% off your entire purchase. Apologies, everyone. The thing about this show is you can't do it if there's no internet. I didn't have internet on Tuesday, so we can't do the show. So I apologize for that. These are little technical things that come up every now and then. Matt Freeman taking gratuitous shots at Kyle Hamilton on the message board. I don't appreciate that. That's not needed. No one needs that. But happy to be back today and talk some season projections. CFB Hertz projects a floor of 16 wins. That would make them national champions. That's CFB Hertz. His projections are on display there. So that's good for him. Justin Kane says regular season 10-2. That's probably a little bit on the pessimistic side. Rajon says win the first one and away we go. Away goes Mike Martin. Some comments to media. He's wearing a nice gray suit. I wonder if that's ESQ. It looks like ESQ. That collar.
I'm gonna guess yes.
I'm gonna guess it is an ESQ outfit that he's got going on. So we'll monitor some things that he has to say. Jamie, how's it going? How are you doing? How are things?
I'm doing great. I'm excited. We're kind of finally figured out when spring ball, like that's kind of more concrete plans there. I'm excited to get out to South Bend and see the team a little bit. Well, we'll only see the team a little bit in the spring, but I'm excited about it.
Yeah. Speaking of the NFL and drafts and the combine, not a lot going on at the combine this year. I feel like there was a big shift in like the top players and how they're treating the combine this year. I mean, a lot of Notre Dame's guys, they play deep into the postseason, so that's understandable. But not a lot of testing, right? Not a lot of the top players testing. I think that makes sense to me. I feel like for a lot of them, it's only a negative, and it's not really a positive. The quarterbacks aren't really throwing. Some of the quarterbacks did. Riley Leonard threw, and he threw the ball pretty well.
Yeah, he did well.
Yeah, what that means for him, as far as draft position, I don't know. But look, you have an opportunity to look good, and you go look good, and that's what's important for him. So yeah, not a lot. Well, Mitchell Evans worked out. I thought. What was he, a 4.7, 4.71, 4.74? Those two numbers stick out in my mind, which is about correct for him. I think those are good times. He looked good in the gauntlet running the.
He tested out solid. First of all, he's huge.
Yeah,
right.
Big guy.
Like, he's one of the biggest guys there. So he, his kind of testing numbers for it. It wasn't a great year tight end wise in terms of like there's not really the freaky guys. I mean, I would say like because the top guys didn't test, so that had a an impact on it. But there was like a couple of years ago, one of the things, and that's probably one of the reasons why Michael Mayer ended up dropping, was because there was like a bunch of guys that were just absolute freaks that tested. I mean, it turns out that almost every one of those guys has been a really good player in the NFL so far.
Yeah. And speaking about the portal and the NFL and the kind of a comparison, Mike Martin, speaking to the media right now, says believes the NFL. So he's speaking about the NFL and he's relating this back to college football. Believes the NFL has to build through the draft and supplement through free agency. So the draft would be basically recruiting, high school recruiting, and free agency would be the portal. We'll lean on high school recruiting, but we'll look to improve the roster through the portal. Doesn't want to live in the portal and will be selective, which is a lot of what we've heard from Marcus Freeman in the past, talking about they're going to major in recruiting and minor in the portal. Won't be driven by rankings. They'll have their own evaluation of people and players. Think the head coach will be involved in that evaluation, Jamie? You think?
I would say so, since he's been the whole time. but I guess other people disagree or well, I know that whatever. Other people just like to talk about stuff and whatever.
Not according to some. So let's just actually start there. Chad Bowden gave another Q&A to the media talking about various things within the program. And look, he's going to do this. Chad likes to be forward facing, and he likes to it's very clear to me that USC's plan this offseason is to make waves and make news and be in the news and
change the narrative.
Change the narrative and that sort of thing. Made some comments that Lincoln Riley is the best recruiting head coach he's ever been around. Said that he's the only head coach that he's been around. He's been around two. He's been around
three. Three.
Who's
Brian Kelly as well?
Oh, Brian Kelly. Right. He's been Brian Kelly, Luke Fickell, and Marcus Freeman. Lincoln Riley, the only head coach who was ever involved in evaluations and evaluating prospects. Listen, he said some things at the opening press conference that I just regarded as, look, he's excited about his new position. He's hyping up the new school that he's at. Talking about the happiest he's ever been. He's talking about how it meant more to him to go to USC. I think he's an LA guy. You kind of get that, right? Okay. To me, that's kind of nothing. I think this one is whatever you make of it, whatever you think about how Marcus Freeman should feel, how true it is or whatever, it was clearly intentional. It was an intentional thing that he said, and he wanted people to react to it as we are now. There's a thing that if I was Lincoln Riley, I would say, Chad Bowden is a GM. He sets up the team, but as far as the game day stuff, he doesn't put together a game plan. He doesn't coach the players. He doesn't have to play. To me, he's a guy who's starting the fire, who doesn't have to fight the fire. And Marcus Freeman, he remembers this stuff. And I just think you got to be careful with the way that you're speaking about your former employer, your former boss, your friend. So, that's just kind of where I come out. What is your reaction to what Chad Bowden's got going on right
now? Just with Michael Hahn, he wasn't encouraged to look elsewhere. That's not a thing. That wasn't, they didn't run him off. That's not what happened in the situation. It was not, I won't say that him leaving was unexpected, but it was like, they tried to keep him. So they offered him a huge raise and blah, blah, blah. He wanted to go to USC for more money and whatever. Right. So, but anyways, it wasn't that situation. So I think we should put that to bed. That's not a thing. I think it was obviously, those are pointed comments. Very much, he's doing that. Yeah. Like, poking the bear. He's trying to, get a reaction out of it. Also trying to hype up, talk about who he's selling now. And which is what I bet you could find, we could go through quotes and I bet we could go and find Chad Bowden talking about how Marcus Freeman's the best recruiter that he's ever been. I guarantee you we can find multiple quotes of him saying that. So I wouldn't take it any other way than this is what he kind of does, and he's doing it. In saying that, he just could have easily just hyped up his own guy and not made it into a thing where he's trying to basically put down the previous group he went to. And to me, and my read on it is, which is pretty pathetic, and I'm sorry, it just is pathetic, is he is one of these guys, he cares a lot about what other people think. He does, which is why he's talks to, we've talked to whatever, which I'll say why we're a bit more openly criticizing him about certain things when he left than maybe some others, because there's other people who, there's relationships involved in terms of information or whatever. I don't care. This guy doesn't talk to me. He
doesn't talk to me.
I don't care. Sure. I don't care. I don't care about him. But I'll tell you what, he does listen. If he's not listening, I doubt he's downloading H&H, but he listens to what people say and whatever, and picks up stuff. And when our podcast or another podcast or whatever, or whoever just around the Notre Dame beat talks about how, well, he's a really dogged recruiter and say the pros of what he brought to it, but talk about how he wasn't a great evaluator. That wasn't his strength, right? He wasn't that. I bet was part of the thing that, ignites that response, because first of all, he takes that kind of stuff personal. He thinks he is the man and all that, and so much of the credit deserves to go to him for, bringing in this guy or that guy. And that's just, maybe I think you could say that probably like Marcus Freeman hyping up what a great evaluator Mike Mickens was probably irks him, because he probably wants to take credit for Leonard Moore or Ben Morrison or whoever. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's kind of how he is. That's kind of who he is. And he's competitive. I get it. You know what? He wants to get USC up to a certain level, whatever. But I think, as many people have pointed out, if Lincoln Riley is the best, evaluator and head coaching recruiter that he's been around, so does that mean he stinks as a coach because they've been bad, because they're 15-13 in their last 28 games? Yeah. Where Notre Dame is 25-5 over that same time period. Like, are they like what are you like? Is it also his way of like trying to dig digs at whatever what happened before, or like that what about all the guys that they took that were hyped transfers that busted? What about all the guys that they brought in? What about the Malachi Nelson, who came in, was supposed to be whatever, and now he's on his third school or whatever? And I'm not saying, like, the guy's obviously done a great Lincoln Riley quarterbacks. He deserves. How many guys? There's no one in college football who has his resume with quarterbacks. So I don't want to say anything about. He obviously knows how to coach that position. He knows how to, find the right guys for that position, all that kind of stuff too. But to say that he is this certain kind of evaluator and use it as a way to kind of, take a shot at Marcus Freeman, which really also is a shot at Luke Fickell, I guess he gets zero credit for all of, those Cincinnati guys who went to the league and what they built there and all that, or the, the corner that they just get, that Wisconsin just got bought by Miami, that was started as a true freshman or whatever. He gets no credit for that either. Like, maybe, I don't know, maybe he's not as involved in whatever, but I can just know from what Marcus Freeman does. And I know, like, his involvement with it when he was an assistant, especially, but also when he was the head coach. Like, he is someone too that he will pound his fist on the table for someone if he thinks they're like he was a big Kennedy Urlacher guy.
Yeah, I was going to say that's exactly who I was going to bring up.
So it's just incorrect. What
right? That's why to me it's so pointed. It's like people are saying in the chat, like, "Oh, what's he supposed to say?" Well, you could say something that's true.
Yeah,
whatever you say, you could say something that's true. He is not the only, like, Marcus Freeman is an evaluator. He evaluates prospects. You just have, I mean, it's a fact. It's not a opinion.
He's not involved in it as much as whatever, but if I don't know what to tell you about, like, I think it is about W's and L's ultimately. And, one guy has done this and has built this with recruiting and has built this within their program. And the other guy is like, well, man, I don't know if they have the money to buy him out, but if he doesn't do this again, maybe they will. Like, it's two different spectrums there.
Right.
So it's just Chad's talking out of his butt. Like, he needs to shut up about that stuff.
And to be clear, like, he can say what he wants. And this is like very good for the rivalry. It's good for the rivalry and it's good for the game. And so that, like, in my opinion, from a content standpoint, we are in the business of content.
Hey, thanks.
It's great.
Thanks for this
like,
time.
it's fantastic.
Appreciate it.
Again, the people are mentioning in the chat, like Greg Washington said, what's he supposed to say? Well, there's always a way to pump up Lincoln Riley without mentioning.
Don't be a dick.
Without mentioning Marcus Freeman. Lincoln Riley's a great recruiter. He's a great evaluator. And that's something that I've learned over the last couple, whatever. And look, it's not that he can't say this or he shouldn't say this or whatever. It's just that when it's plainly intentional, when it's plainly on purpose, then I think it's noteworthy that he is doing that. He does not need to say it this way. There are other ways for him to say it, and he chose to, and that's fine. It is what it is. I just think there's consequences to that. There is going to be a reaction from Notre Dame to that. And I think for me, he is trying to make news, perhaps at the expense of the overall program. He's trying to get himself in the news. He wants people talking about him. He wants people talking about what Chad Bowden said. Like, that's fine. Again, like Mike Martin is speaking right now. Dollars to donuts. He is not going to say anything newsworthy. It will not get picked up by anyone. He's the GM.
Put it this way. He's not going to go and say, well, I'm so happy to be working for a head coach who really cares about his players. This is the first head coach I've been around that really cares about his players or something like that. Right. Like, because you know why he won't say that? First of all, even if he felt that way, he doesn't feel that way. But I'm just saying, like, even if he felt that way, no one would say that knowing that it's like, if anyone who worked in Detroit or the previous places that he's worked in the NFL for a number of years, it wouldn't take that as a shot at the previous guys that he worked with, because that's what it is.
Right.
So Chad could do what he wants. He's a big boy. He can, make his own decisions. But I just don't understand why you go and say that stuff, because what it ultimately does is it burns a bridge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know what is going to happen. Lincoln Riley could get canned within the next 2 years. I think that's definitely on the table. If they don't get it turned around, like, there's no guaranteeing that they are going to win, be a college football playoff team this year, and maybe not next year either, right? And ultimately, if you're paying someone $11 million and they never made a playoff within 5 years at a place like USC, and you're, also too, like, you're barely kind of scraping by as like hey, we just made a bowl game, whatever. That got Clay Helton fired. That got Kiffin and Sark did better, right? Like, it was like, so if if he's gone, hey, maybe Jen Cohen says, well, this is your GM to whatever. But if you bring in an actual legit head coach, that guy probably doesn't want Chad because Chad is not his guy. He's going to want his guy to be there. And then if Chad is on his own, well, it's a relationship business. If you don't have something else, like, it's not like Marcus would be like, hey, come back here, Chad. Or Luke Fickle's going to be like, hey, man, why don't you come and run the things in Wisconsin after you said all this stuff? Like, no, that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. It's a bad look for him. It's a stupid thing to say. It's just dumb.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to season projections. So listen, I'm gonna put up this from our friend Michael Bryan, who put out a Substack, who has just started a Substack, and it's called Spreadsheets and Tailgates .substack.com. Free plug for our buddy because he does good stuff.
Great stuff.
Yeah, really good stuff. So he put this up, and there's got a bunch of other charts up as well. So I encourage everyone to check that out. So we've got win probabilities up here from SP Plus. Overall projected wins is 10.15. Now, I've learned this in the past, like Notre Dame is favored in every game. So it's like, well, if they're favored in every game, how is the projected wins only 10.1? They're not favored by 100, like it's not 100%, right? So to me, the projected overall wins isn't really indicative of anything. You look at the win probabilities. According to SP Plus at this moment, they're favored to win every game. The closest two games are going to be Miami at Miami to open the season, and then home for Texas A&M. And then obviously the games are listed in order here. So that's kind of where it is. Obviously doesn't think that much of Purdue. He wrote, he believes that in the tiers, as far as it, he's got Boise State in tier 2 as an opponent. And you look at the win probability, and there's a reason that he thinks that. Obviously Arkansas looms large a little bit here, but when you look at this schedule and you look at the win probabilities and you look at the way Notre Dame is built, to me, I think people look at the schedule and they say, what's easy schedule or whatever. And like, we always have these conversations in March, and someone turns out to be really good and we don't. It's unpredictable. Someone turns out to be not as good, and that's unpredictable as well. But I think the fact of the matter is that Notre Dame itself is a good football team. And that goes a long way towards like why they're projected to win every game. It's because they themselves have a nice little program here. What kind of stands out to you just looking at this chart and, kind of projecting what Notre Dame can be in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, so I'll just rattle off the tiers too that MB put out too, because I think it is a good way to kind of look at it. And people can assume, but this is mostly based on where people are ranked SP Plus wise, right? So that's how it kind of works too, right? So A&M and Miami are in the first tier, Boise State and USC are in the second tier. They're like 30th ish, right? So what 30 or USC is 30th and Boise State is 31st. So that's why they're in that tier 2. Yeah. After that, Arkansas, Navy, Pitt. Navy, he bumped up from where they are, but I totally agree with him. Remember, we kind of went over that last week. Tier 4, NC State, Syracuse, BC, Stanford. Tier 5, Purdue, right? Obviously, Purdue has like one of the smallest returning production. They basically are turning over their roster again. It's like 30 plus new guys or whatever, that kind of thing in the portal. It's obviously a brand new coach. It's a new system. I think sometimes when that happens, they could be a little bit better because things can kind of like get a little bump up because obviously things were so bad that they can just kind of jump up. They might not be like truly horrific as you would look like the numbers would project them to be, but they're probably like their ceiling is probably 4 to 5 wins. Like, and if everything goes right, that's kind of where they're at. Like, that's a team Notre Dame should smoke, and most teams should beat pretty good. That if you're a good team, I think what really stands out to me is A&M again is one of these teams that is really, because of what they've done in times of portal wise, in terms of like replacing some of the guys they've lost, and just in terms of their returning production, it gets boosted up because of that kind of thing. And they went and got like some pretty high profile guys in the portal. I would say though that it's one of those things where A&M kind of, because of that, they're not really like deep into the recruiting in terms of like Mike Elko, that class that he just signed was his first full class, right? Because this is year 2 for him, so that's his first full class. So they're not really like fully into all of the guys that are their guys, So it's going to take a while, I think, where even though like they're top 15, there's a lot of ifs there, right? Like they're losing 3 just straight dudes up front, where they're not getting banged on for that because they're bringing in some other D linemen to replace them, but they're not bringing in a Nick Scordon, as compared to say what they, what he did last year, where he was the guy who led the Big Ten in sacks. He comes in and it's like, well, he's one of the best defensive linemen. The SEC is one of the best in the country again. And the other guys that they brought in, they don't have another Shamar Turner and Shamar Stewart popping up. It's not to say that some of those guys won't be good. They're going to be good on the defensive line. They just might not be like, oh my gosh, like this is just scary to run against them, to do much against them. The pass rush is just going to be nuts. They're going to be good on defense. But it's like, how good, and Marcel Reed is very much who CFB Hurt just brought up. What kind of player is he this year? Yeah. Because you can look at like the second half of the LSU game where he's running wild and he's looking great and whatever. And then there's a lot of other games where the South Carolina game, it wasn't that great, playing. That was a game on the road, right? What's that guy? What is he going to be like on the road? A&M, that's their first road game, right? Yeah. So, and all of a sudden you're just like, that's, it's a different beast, right? Those guys haven't it's probably the farthest those guys have ever traveled for a game like that. There's all those kind of, pieces that come into it. So, A&M is intriguing, but they're kind of like, I'd almost put them in like the Louisville thing where it's like, man, they have a chance to maybe really be like a top 15-ish team. And they probably could kind of end up there, but it also wouldn't be surprising if they're like fringe top 25 too, because they still don't really have all of their guys. And Miami's the really interesting one because obviously that's a hot first week of the season, high profile game, another big game on the road. We talked about how, Carson Beck is there. What's his health status in terms of in the summer and all that. I think the big thing is just losing all of those, what they did on offense. Like, I don't understand because they're not obviously into returning production. They are like 80th or something, right?
Yeah.
82nd in returning production. And they're losing the 5 top pass catchers on the team. Their 4 top receivers. Their starting tight end. 7 guys at the NFL Combine from Miami out of the 10 guys are offensive players. Cam Ward's going to be the friggin' number 1 pick. So, I don't know. I mean, Carson Beck might come in there and be great. Is he going to be number 1 pick great? Is he going to first of all, is he going to be healthy? Are the receivers going to be, like you said, they got some talent coming up. They only got CJ Daniels in the portal. I'm sure they'll try to buy somebody in the spring window.
Yeah.
But so that's something to monitor. But I don't know. Like, they're projected first as the top offense in the country.
I don't understand that. I truly don't. That to me is like, I need to go back and check my methods.
Yes.
I just don't know how you can come up with that. I don't.
You put a extra 0 in the spreadsheet or something. Like, I don't know. To me, it that seems off. It seems off. And they are bringing back a fair amount of their own line, and that's something there too. They got new backs, but it's you can replace backs and all that stuff. But I just think like when you're losing that, I think even if you look at say like Alabama, when Alabama was rolling, right? Like when they were just absolutely like they got 4 first-round picks at receiver. Well, when those guys left, and then it was like, well, the next guy's going to come in or whatever. It didn't really work that way. They didn't have not all of those guys hit. Like we talked about Ja'Cory Brooks, he was okay there. Then he became a dude later at Louisville. So it wasn't like they just didn't have all those guys who kind of hit in the same way after those guys left. And it's just not a guarantee there. So I don't know. I just think, and they're 59th in DF plus last year.
Mm-hmm.
They gave up over 30 points per game against Power 4 opponents. They new coordinator. Yeah. They easily could be a top 20 defense, right? Like, because they'll have talent. They also brought in like, that's the other thing. They brought in like 4 corners in the portal who are all good. Like they're all starters. But I'm always like, well, not all those guys are going to start. So the guys who don't start, what is that going to be? Are there going to be guys who are going to be like, I'm just why? This money's great, but I came here for this. I'm not like, if you don't have that culture around you, then like a Rod Hurd might be cool with just being like, yeah, I can do that. Not everybody's going to be like that, So I think there's a lot of stuff to monitor there with them in terms of like, they are high floor, high ceiling, but definitely not like the ceiling for them isn't the number one offense. There's no way they're going to be the number one offense in the country this year. Please quote that if I'm wrong and shove it back in my face. But I just don't see
plus per SP
yeah.
plus. Not going to happen.
Yeah, but I think the most interesting thing is that those are the first 2 games of the season for Notre Dame, right? Yeah. So those are the teams talent-wise when you look at like raw talent in terms of recruiting talent, all that kind of stuff. Them and USC will be, those are the top teams that the Notre Dame's going to play, and you're playing them 1-2. So it's like, if you do win the first couple games, you're really in a good spot the rest of the way, as long as, obviously Marcus Freeman is going to have to, and the staff is going to have to do a great job of like keeping these guys on point. But I have a feeling that they're going to be able to do it.
So here's the other thing with Texas A&M too, is you look at their team and the success that they had, last year. I think in some respects it was surprising just because they hadn't been very good. Mike Elko came in, they were viable, right? At the very least, they were viable to beat a good team. All their tough games were at home. They were just not a good road team last year. And now they go to Notre Dame. Notre Dame's not an easy place to win just because, I don't want to make it sound like it's Kyle Field or anything, because it isn't, but it's you're not at home and you're at Notre Dame, and that game is going to be lit up, right? And look, I think it's one of those games like we got to monitor the attendance situation as far as Texas A&M and traveling. I assume they're going to travel really well. How are Notre Dame fans? Like, there's always a question about how Notre Dame fans are going to react to that. At least they're not bright red like every other team that comes.
No, it is funny, yeah.
At least it's a darker color. It's not going to stand out as much. So that's something to keep in mind for me. It's like Texas A&M on the road against Notre Dame. Notre Dame's better anyway. That Notre Dame we should feel pretty good about Notre Dame in that matchup. And just real quickly, thank you. It's Chechi for pointing out. Like, I don't understand what's going on here. I put up the chart and the chart didn't come up. It was up for us, Jamie, but I was checking actually if I went to my phone and I was like, is there a chart on the thing? There's no chart. So no one was looking at a chart. We were looking at a chart.
Okay.
No one
Sorry,
else
guys.
was looking at a chart. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
So I have to figure out what's going on there. Here's the thing with USC. You were talking about, Miami improving on defense. USC definitely improved under D'Anton Lynn last year from what they were in 2023, 100%. He is regarded out here not to the Al Golden level, but like USC fans talk about D'Anton Lynn like they didn't go 6-6, and I know that they and I know that they like improved on defense.
Yeah, they did. They drastically. I mean, it was bad. It was bad. Yes,
it was bad. Notre Dame went to USC and had their best offensive performance since 1992 at USC. They scored 35 points. Notre Dame hasn't scored 35 points in a long, long time. I mean, 2000, they scored 38, and they scored 49, but the pick sixes and stuff.
Yeah.
They scored 38, I think, offensive points in 2000, but that was very much turnover aided as well.
They would have scored more than 35 too if they didn't turn the ball over, which they hadn't done really
right
to that point as well.
Like Notre Dame helped them in only scoring 35 points. And so, I'm confused by that.
Kind of ran on them at will.
100%. And you didn't have Jeremiah Love playing in the game, like for half of it. I don't know. Notre Dame didn't have their best player offensively, and they just kind of, I don't know. They just tore through them. So,
this is good because I wanted to talk about USC because, obviously they're another team, right? That could kind of come up. They also could be worse. There's a lot of things going into it. I think it is super interesting with them is that I don't think they're in a good spot in terms of like them being 97th in returning production. That's bad when you're a bad football team the year before.
Yeah.
Like Notre Dame was 99th, heading into last year. They went 14-2 and went to the playoff. They went to the championship game, so, and had numerous injuries and still did well. But Notre Dame, like we've kind of said, Notre Dame is in a different spot as a program than USC. Like USC's still taking a ton of guys in the portal. And like maybe, Chad said that they're, hey, they're going to they're going to major in recruiting and then minor in the portal. They kind of haven't done that yet.
That's something you do year one, not year 4.
Or maybe year 2 because, it's you take over in the middle of the whatever, right? But definitely not in year 4. That's not a good time to do it. So and I wrote about this last week. How they 20 players who played 200 plus snaps for them on defense last year. 13 of them were transfers. And 5 of the 6 players who played the most snaps for them were transfers. The linebackers, they had 2 guys. One guy was a second team all Big 12 linebacker. The other guy from Oregon State was a first team all Pac-12 linebacker. They stunk for them. And they were good players at their previous spot. So it's like, yes, they were way better on defense, but like, why did those guys stink? They got a new linebackers coach now, and I guess they're really buying into Rob Ryan being a big fix for them. But I don't know. Like it's the same kind of thing where they're kind of like rebuilding the offensive line again.
Yeah.
They're like, they're kind of just like kind of doing that again. They lost 3 starters on the offensive line. They're doing it again. They're going to the portal again to try to get guys. Like I'm sure that Elijah Page, who was very good in the second half of the year. I'm sure he's going to be a good player for them this year. So like, that's not a thing. They're going to have some decent players there, but they're also like in that same situation where they're like an injury away from it being disastrous. Like really, like they're just kind of like that. And I mentioned too this week how they spent big to get Keyshawn Silver from Kentucky in the portal. And he's a big ass dude. Like he's 6'4", 330, whatever. Former 5-star, was an edge, grew into a nose. He played like less than 50 plays at North Carolina in his first 2 years. So not really what you expect from a 5-star.
Yeah.
He's played less than 700 snaps in his career. He's going to year 5. He's got 3 Havoc plays. 3 in his total career. And they paid probably $1.5 million or something like that for him in the portal. They're going to get 1 year of him. I'm not saying he's going to be a bad player. He's probably going to be solid at the very least. He's a decent player, but he was like not a PF grades, not gospel at all. Not something you shake, whatever. But generally, if you're not in the top 200 of the power 4 defensive tackles, it means he didn't play that great. And he wasn't for guys who played 200 plus snaps. So they're in a lot of those situations where who are their guys that are like on defense that you're like, this guy's just a game wrecker. Like they have a couple edges that I really like, young guys who played last year that I think can be good. Like Fountain, I think he's going to be a good player. Like he's going to be really good.
Yeah.
I like some guys on their roster for sure. Obviously on offense, Maivia, hey, he super talented. We obviously saw, chuck the ball over the place against Notre Dame. Also had 5 picks in the last 2 games. 2 picks against Ed, 2 pick sixes against ND, 3 picks against Texas A&M in the bowl game. I don't know. I just there's a chance they could be bad again. Like they just it's on the table. And I do think Danton Lynn is a really good coach, but it's like, when one of the things with Al Golden, and obviously he did a better job in the last 2 years than he did the first year, but that first year, one of the big differences was like the talent wasn't as good on defense that year. And then when the talent started creeping up the next 2 years, then they really made a jump. I'm not sure if the talent is that much better on defense. It's kind of like the same.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And I just, they like Anthony Lucas didn't play, whatever, so yeah, these guys, it's like he was pretty good for them last year when he was healthy. And Gentry, but it's like Eric Gentry, this guy just had to sit out the season because of multiple concussions.
Yeah.
Which basically means he's one hit away from like, maybe this dude should retire, so that's a lot. Like, are they developing kids? Are they, we know that Makai Lemon's going to be a stud. That guy's going to be a problem. They have pieces on offense. Like, but I also don't know that Maivia is going to be the quarterback when I don't know that they're not going to go Longstreet, who's the top 50 freshman quarterback. I don't know that he's not going to be the starter by the time they get to Notre Dame. Because the other thing is that they got that schedule again where it's just not like they should start 3-0. They play 2 lower, like kind of Sun Belt-ish teams, and then they play Purdue on the road at Purdue. I mean, if they lose on the road at Purdue, ooh, that'd be rough. Then they play Sparty at home, year 2 of Jonathan Smith. Sparty's going to be better. They're going to be better than they were. At Illinois, Michigan at home, then travel to ND. I don't know.
Illinois, Michigan, and ND is Illinois. They're a real football.
That's a physical.
Yeah.
When we're talking about body blows,
yeah,
they could win both those games, but then the body blows might catch up to them against Notre Dame.
Yeah,
because you know that I mean, Notre Dame's going to bring the smoke when they play that game.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. I mean, I feel like I almost feel bad for them, whatever. But it's just like I just don't think they've done it right, and I don't see them. They're definitely not a playoff team. I mean, USC's always dangerous. Could they win that game? Yeah.
Yeah.
They also haven't won at Notre Dame since 2011. Brian Kelly's second year. Brian Kelly's going into year 4 at LSU. He coached at Notre Dame for 12 years. They haven't won since Brian Kelly's second year at Notre Dame. That's how long it's been since they won a game in South Bend. So, I like Notre Dame to kick the living crap out of them in that game.
The thing with USC, I think, and it's like the mistake that Lincoln Riley made, that it's not the mistake that Marcus Freeman made, is that I don't think USC knows what it wants to be. I don't, like Mike Martins today, he said, we know what kind of players we want to bring in.
Yeah.
And so that's who we're targeting. We know who we want. We know who we are. And that's what we're going after. It makes it so much easier than just we're hitting up Southern California. We're getting all the California kids. It's like, fine, great. But like, I don't think USC knows what it is. And so therefore they don't have an identity. They don't have just like when everyone goes into that program, this is who we are. And Notre Dame has that. And I think that Lincoln Riley thought I can just bring Oklahoma to USC, and it just doesn't work that way. I mean, we've seen like Rich Rod when he went to Michigan. It's like Rich Rod's a good coach.
That's a great example.
Rich Rod's
one.
a good coach. It ain't Michigan. What he is not Michigan. And you can't just import yourself into a program. You have to. The thing about college football is programs have an identity, and it's hard to go away from that identity when it's just like a blue blood like USC and it's a blue blood like Notre Dame or whatever, or Michigan. You can't change it. There's no surprise that Notre Dame was a run first program last year, and that ended up being the key to their success. It's no surprise that Michigan was a run first team, and that's what brought them their national title. Like, that is just who they are. And I don't think USC has an identity, and especially on defense. That's their biggest problem. That's why Lincoln Riley's never had a good defense, because it's not important to him. It's not a part of his ethos as a coach. It isn't. And so, look, Deonton Lenny, he might be really good. It's just, I can't see them fielding a defense like Notre Dame had, or like Ohio State had, or like Michigan had. It's just not something that it matters to him. I don't think it's the way that he wants to play football doesn't lend itself, in my opinion. And so, listen,
it's like different leagues too, where you're just playing, and it's not about they always talk about the travel. It's not about the travel. It's about who you got. It's like anything you play in, if it's pro sports or college football or whatever. You know what the teams you're directly, if you're in the NFC East, you know, this is how Philly's built. The Eagles, this is how they're built. Well, we better be able to combat that, or else it ain't happening for us, right?
Yeah.
You have to know who you're competing against, and you can't play the Big 12 football. I mean, first of all, you can't even play Big 12 football in the Pac-12. First of all, people thought the Pac-12 was soft, but it's not, especially comparatively to the Big 12 and how wide open that was. And then you get into the Big 10 and you play some of these teams that are going to we're just going to run it down your throat for 60 minutes. You got to be able to deal with that. And if you can't, that's whatever. You have to build a certain way. And I think one thing you've kind of learned about Riley so far. I mean, maybe they get it turned around, whatever. I don't like the odds, but he did a great job of kind of like taking where Stoops was and Oklahoma was and enhancing that to a certain respect. And kind of running with what was already made, but it was already pre-made. It was just like he just stepped in. Rebuilding a program, that's a lot tougher. And I mean, because you can even say with the Marcus Freeman, his job was easier in a lot of ways because he took over a program. Yes, there were definitely holes and things they need to improve and upgrading talent and all this kind of stuff, right? And different things to change within the program. But look at how many of these guys, the Heinishes, the Howard Cross, the Riley Mills, the Joe Alts, the Blake Fishers, all of these guys that were part of what JD Bertrand, all these guys who were part of recruited by Brian Kelly during that era and that it passed over. There is already like a good culture in place and they built upon that culture and enhanced it. But going into a place where it's like, you got to like create the culture. I mean, this guy's done a terrible job. He just has.
Yeah. And that's why they have been what they are. We had some tech issues on this show. If you are having tech issues that you need to get figured out, Jamie, maybe we need to hit up Vahid. We might have hit up Vahid and what's going on in this StreamYard. But you can do that as well for your small business, your social media page, or your highlight reel, whatever it might be. With VSR Media, founded by Notre Dame Football pregame host and Emmy Award-winning anchor Vahid Sadrazadeh, VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo, whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or are aiming to diversify and grow your business. VSR Media specializes in short and long-form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior and sports photos. Contact them at vsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. Just some news and notes out. Rob Hunt had a press conference, Jamie, had a media availability. So there's some updates on some injuries here. Players out for spring. Jordan Botelho, Ashton Craig, Davion Dixon, Cooper Flanagan, Kahanu Kia, Chris Tarek, Boubacar Traore, Chance Tucker, and Jalen Stroman with the right clavicle. Sounds like he broke his collarbone, Jamie. That's kind of newsy in the...
I think that might be him recovering from what happened to him during this. He missed last season, right?
So he's still got that problem?
Well, I don't know. I that would just be my assumption, unless he re-broke it during this time. But it just doesn't make sense that he would have. They wouldn't be doing anything where he would be able to re-break it, or they went and did a surgery and it turns out it didn't go well, aka the Riley Leonard.
Yeah. So that to me, this is Luke Talich, Kennedy Urlacher, Bronte Johnson. Let's see it. This is your moment, right? Like they're going to get a ton of reps, get a ton of opportunities. Modified activity this spring. Anthony Knapp with the ankle. He had like a surgical procedure on his ankle, so that was a very bad injury. Cole Mullins with the left knee. Will Pauling, right 5th minute, he broke his foot. And so he's not. I think this was a previous injury, the Will Pauling injury. That was he broke his foot, so he's modified activity. Billy Strouth with his left ankle. Man, that
I can't believe he played.
I can't believe he played as much as he did. I mean, we're months after the fact, and he's like modified activity. And O-line, Robbie Wolin, right lateral meniscus. Full go is CJ Carr. That's pretty big. Never considered surgery for Jeremiah Love. So that's something. Whatever was going on with him. Didn't require surgery, which is why he was able to play. He will do little to nothing in the spring, I imagine. So it is what it is. For him, probably the same to some extent for Jadarian Price. I think like this spring, I think it said there's going to be less practices. Did I see that right? There's only going to be 10.
They said 10 to 15.
10 to 15. It sounds like they're modifying. So what
I think they talked about it. Yeah, they talked about because it was talked about before. Not Hunt didn't talk about it, but it was I can't remember if it was Martin or I think I was it Martin. Maybe he was talking about it.
It was it was the Weigel, John Weigel.
Yeah, John Weigel, sports science. Head of sports science for Notre Dame. So, which makes so much sense. Notre Dame had so many extra practices because of the CFP. That they had like so much extra wear on their bodies from those additional games, and the things, and the fact that like it went into like we're not that far away from the season just ending, like for them, and it's like so. Obviously, for the people who are watching the NFL Combine, I'm sure so many Notre Dame fans were like, "What? X Watts isn't running, or this or that, or whatever." It's like these guys, like some of these other guys, their seasons ended in November. They've been training at, such and such sports performance place, gearing up for the combine for months.
Yeah.
Notre Dame was like, these guys need to take a couple of weeks off. Just their bodies are beat up. And then they got to get into their stuff. So pro days that's why, they kind of have to do it. Just imagine they wouldn't do that in you wouldn't be like, hey, Chiefs, you just won the Super Bowl. Come here, run, make sure you do your pro agility and then your 40 here in 6 weeks later, right? Like
I don't know that any of the Ohio State guys did anything.
It was the same thing with them. They most of those guys didn't, which it just shows that's probably like all of these guys, or not all, most of them go and treat it like that's a huge job interview, not just like the actual interviews, but your, testing and all that there too. And if you perform bad at this thing, that's going to cost you, it could cost you a lot of money. So if you're not all the way healthy and you aren't like training there too, like it's why too, like so many of those guys skipped the Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
Because it was like, if you're not good there, like it's going to cost you. Right. Yeah. So, pro day will be huge for Notre Dame. And I think it's great because that'll probably end up bringing more NFL people to Notre Dame's pro day than maybe even originally were supposed to come. They always get a good turnout. They usually get all, 32 teams or whatever, but you'll probably get more there than normal in terms of just scouts and stuff. And then that'll build up. So the guys who didn't get invited to the combine, there's going to be probably some more people watching them too. So which will be great for guys like, guys who got snubbed like RJ Oben and Jordan Clark. Right. So, I think that's, it all makes sense to me to kind of like limit the workload for, not just, the whole team, but like, there's going to be guys who have individualized stuff in terms of how much they do. And I think that's probably the way that you'd expect it. And if you think about like how NFL teams treat some of these like mini camps that are going to like come up before, it's the same thing where some of these guys are just like doing hardly anything because it's, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And you're getting these guys ready to make sure that they are good August and September.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's the main thing. So, obviously sucks that so many of these guys, the other guy, no one who other than Stroman was the only one who was maybe a surprise that he wasn't going to be available. then again, that's when we talk about it's Urlacher, Luke Talich, Tay Johnson. Great opportunity for those guys.
Fortunately for Notre Dame, there's a lot of youth that can use the reps in the meantime. Individualized plans: Josh Burnham, Bryce Young, Drake Bowen, Jalen Sneed, Leonard Moore, Christian Gray, Adon Schuler, Jeremiah Love, Emil Wagner, Jaden Greathouse. You know what I was wondering is, and I'm kind of perusing it as we're talking here, I didn't see anyone mention Jordan Faison, and I'm wondering how they feel about the lacrosse thing this year, because in his opening game, I saw some photos and he still had that ankle wrapped. When's that going to get done? Like, when is that going to get healthy? Because look, whatever lacrosse is, he's making cuts. He is working it. Like he's like, you know, and look, maybe it's just one of those things. Like it doesn't matter how long, he's always going to have to get it wrapped now. Cause like high ankle sprains are kind of like that. But I'm just curious where he kind of is in terms of individualized plans. He took a ton of snaps last year, especially at the end. So it'll be interesting to kind of find out what they feel about Jordan Faison, if he's even involved in spring practice at all for Notre Dame in the football team, especially given like there's other guys on individualized plans. How much do they need him out there for football in the spring? That'll be something to monitor as well. So I think that'll do it. That'll do it for the show today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you like what you heard, please hit that like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell. So whenever it is, we are going live. That'll be next week. We'll be back on Monday with Mike for Power Hour. And then, fingers crossed, we'll be back on Tuesday as well for another Hit and Hustle show. So have a good rest of your day. Have a good weekend, everyone. We'll talk to you soon. Keep hitting and hustling.